Maybe the neocortex isn't where fairness lives. Maybe it runs deeper than that. Maybe it's not a feature of advanced brains specifically, but something wired into social brains generally. Any brain that has to navigate a group. Any brain that has to keep track of who's contributing and who's taking more than their share. The crow doesn't need a neocortex to know it got a bad deal. It just needs to be the kind of animal that lives with others and has to trust them to survive. At some point, you stop looking at individual animals and start looking at the pattern. Birds split from mammals over 300 million years back. Whatever this instinct is, it didn't come from us. We didn't teach it to them. It didn't spread through culture or language. It evolved independently, multiple times, across wildly different animals, which means it wasn't an accident. Evolution doesn't keep mistakes. If a trait shows up across hundreds of millions of years of separate evolutionary history in species with completely different brain structures, it's because that trait works. It solves something. It helps you survive. So what problem does fairness solve? De Waal spent decades trying to answer that. His argument is that fairness is the foundation of cooperation, and cooperation is one of the most powerful survival tools that exists. A group that cooperates can bring down prey larger than any individual could tackle alone, can defend territory, can raise offspring collectively, can survive winters that would kill a solitary animal. But cooperation requires trust, and trust requires a basic sense that the arrangement is fair, that you're not being exploited, that what you're putting in is roughly matched by what you're getting out. If one member of a group consistently gets more for the same contribution, cooperation breaks down. Resentment builds. Animals stop participating. The group fractures. Fairness isn't a moral philosophy, it's a social glue. It keeps groups together, and groups that stay together survive. The cucumber monkey wasn't having an existential crisis about justice. She was running a calculation her ancestors had been running for millions of years. Is this arrangement worth it? Am I being taken advantage of? Should I walk away? She decided to walk away. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because if fairness is ancient, if it's wired in, if it's not a product of our culture or our laws or our civilization, but something we inherited from a common ancestor tens of millions of years ago, then inequality isn't just a political problem or an economic one. It's a biological one. When people are paid unequally for equal work, when resources are distributed with no relationship to contribution, when the rules visibly apply to some people and not others, the outrage that follows isn't irrational. It's the cucumber flying back across the cage. It's the oldest alarm system in the social brain going off exactly the way it was designed to. De Waal pointed out something else. The fairness instinct only activates when you can see the comparison. The cucumber monkey had no reaction until she watched the other monkey get a grape. Inequality that's hidden doesn't trigger the same response, which is maybe why so much of it is kept hidden. There's one more wrinkle, the discomfort of having more than someone doing the same work. In humans, we have a word for it, guilt. But in a capuchin monkey, it looks like this. She looks at the grape, looks at her neighbor, and slides it back across the floor, which complicates the story considerably. Because now, it's not just about demanding your fair share. Some of these animals were voluntarily giving up an advantage because the arrangement felt wrong. That's not self-interest. That's something closer to conscience. And it showed up in a monkey. Unprompted. With no social pressure to perform it. No audience to impress. Just the grape, the neighbor, and a decision. Frans de Waal died in March 2024. He spent 50 years studying animal behavior and arguing against a lot of resistance that the emotions we call human aren't unique to us, that we didn't invent them, that we inherited them. His last book was called Different, Gender Through the Eyes of a Primatologist. He was still writing, still arguing, still throwing cucumbers back. The thing he came back to over and over across decades of research was this. We like to believe our values came from reason, but the capuchin monkey never read Aristotle, never heard of the French Revolution, never sat through a lecture on distributive justice. She just knew. Equal work. Equal pay. And if that's not the deal, she was done. Turns out she's been done with that deal for about 35 million years. We're just catching up.